TED Talk Slow Version: The Four Greatest Threats to Survival of Humanity. In January of 1995, Russian detectives and nuclear missile headed its way. The alert went all the way to the president, who was deciding whether to strike back when another system contradicted the initial warning. What they thought was the first missile in the massive attack was actually a research rocket studying the Northern Lights. This incident happens after the end of Cold War, but nevertheless one of the closest calls we've had to igniting a global nuclear war. With the invention of atom bomb, humanity gained the power to destroy itself for the first time in our history. Since then, all existential risk of either extinction or the unrecoverable collapse of human civilization, has steadily increased. It's well within our power to reduce this risk. But in order to do so, we have to understand which of our activities pose existential threats now and which might in the future. So far, our species have survived 2,000 centuries, each with some extinction risk from natural causes, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, and the like. Assessing existential risk is inherently uncertain business because usually when we try to figure out how likely something is, we check how often it's happened before, but the complete destruction of humanity has never happened before. While there's no perfect methods to determine our risk from natural threats, experts estimate it's about 1 in 10,000 per century. Nuclear weapons are the first addition to that baseline. While there are many risks associated with nuclear weapons, the existential risk comes from the possibility of global nuclear war and the leads to a nuclear winter. Voices from burning cities locked down the sun for years, causing the crop and humanity depends on to fail. We haven't had a nuclear war yet, but our track record is too short to tell if they're inherently unlikely or we've simply been lucky. We also can't say for sure whether a global nuclear war would cause a nuclear winter so severe it would pose an existential threat to humanity. The next major addition to our existential risk was climate change. Like nuclear war, climate change could result in lots of terrible scenarios that we should be working hard to avoid, but do stop short of causing extinction or unrecoverable collapse. We expect a few degrees Celsius of warming, but can't yet completely rule out 6 or even 10 degrees, which could cause a calamity of possibility unprecedented proportions. Even in this worst-case scenario, it's not clear whether warming would pose a direct existential risk, but its disruption would likely make us more vulnerable to other existential risks. The greatest risk may come from technologies that are still emerging. Take engineered pandemics. The biggest catastrophe in human history have been for pandemics. Biotechnology is enabling us to modify and create germs that could be much more deadly than naturally occurring ones. Such germs can cause pandemics through bioweapon and research accidents. decreased cost of gene sequencing and modification, along with increased availability of potentially dangerous information like the published genomes of deadly viruses, also increased the number of people or groups who could potentially treat such pathogens. Another concern is unaligned AI. Most AI researchers think this will be the century where we develop artificial intelligence that surpasses human abilities across the board. If we call this advantage, we place our future in the hands of the systems we created. Even if created solely with humanity's best interests in mind, superintelligence AI could pose an existential risk if it isn't perfectly aligned with human values, a task scientists are finding extremely difficult. Based on what we know at this point, some experts estimate the anthropogenic extragenous risk is more than 100 times higher than the background rates of natural risk. But this depends heavily on human choices, because most of risk is from human action and is within human control. If we treat safeguarding humanity's future as the defining issue of our time, we can reduce this risk. Whether humanity fulfills its potential or not is in our hands.